Hi, this is the creation guide for the Ranger for Baldur's Gate. So I think just like everybody who grew up in the early aughts, I used to love the Ranger. And I haven't actually played one in a fairly long time, and I know that when I have to do my playthrough challenge, that it's going to be a real challenge. The Ranger it's supposed to have a niche of being a quote-unquote well-intentioned, nature-based fighter, or a kind of versatile scout fighter. But the problem is that the Ranger just isn't as good as a base fighter, and they have a lot of other issues going on them, right? They don't do as much damage as a fighter. They can't sneak as well as a thief. They only get druid spells, but their druid spells are way behind other druids when they cast them. So it seems to be a class that wants to be a bunch of different things, but isn't a master in any of them. With that being said, there is an advantage to what the Ranger is, and its versatility, right? No, they can't hit as hard as a fighter can, and they don't get as many attacks as a fighter can. But they will have more weapon diversity than a fighter does. And it's true that they can't sneak like a thief, but they can go in and they can hit their opponent in melee combat, maybe not doing backstab damage, but they can hit and they can stick around in combat to continue the fight there. So is the Ranger a bad class? Maybe it is, but I'm going to give it a second look, and when I do my playthrough of them, I'm going to really give it a good try. For alignment, Rangers are required to be some form of good. They could be lawful good, neutral good, or chaotic good. There's a note about Rangers, and this also applies to Paladins. If the Ranger's reputation goes too low, and I believe it's anything under 8, then they become fallen. This takes away from their abilities that make them unique to their class, and turns them not just into fighters, but it turns them into fighters that can't get any more than 2 points of proficiencies in any weapon proficiency. So they lose their spellcasting abilities, they lose their stealthing abilities, and they lose anything that makes them a decent fighter. So basically, if you're playing as a Ranger or as a Paladin, don't fall. It sucks. For abilities, an issue with Rangers is that they have a lot of scores to keep track of. Just like the fighter, they want to work on strength, dexterity, and constitution, trying to aim for having all 18s. But in addition, Rangers have to have a minimum wisdom score. Even though wisdom, they don't have to use wisdom at all. It doesn't impact their spellcasting at all. So if you had, hypothetically, a Ranger that had a wisdom of 10, which is impossible, but if they did have a wisdom of 10, then it wouldn't impact their spellcasting at all. Intelligence and charisma aren't a big priority, but I like to think that having your main PC have a good charisma is not a bad idea. Alright, so weapon proficiencies. This is the big thing that makes them different from the fighter. Rangers can only put 2 proficiency points into weapons. They do, however, get a free 2 points into 2 weapon fighting, and they can boost that up by 1. So they can get a total of 3 for 2 weapon fighting. And that's pretty cool. For now, the Ranger actually has a big advantage over the fighter in the fact that they can put 2 weapons, 2 points. They already automatically have 2 points into 2 weapon fighting, which is a very good way to get lots of attacks in and therefore do the most damage. However, the advantage goes away after a few levels because the fighter will be able to put more points into a particular weapon. And eventually, if they get up to 5 points, then they're already doing way more APR, attacks per round, than somebody who has only 2 points in for any weapon. For this, as with all the classes, I recommend using a melee weapon and a missile weapon. I recommend maybe 1 point in for a missile weapon, 2 points in for a melee weapon, and then finish off that 3rd point for the dual for 2 weapon fighting. and therefore you can just immediately have two-weapon fighting right away with only a small penalty to the offhand. For skills, Rangers get hide in shadows and move silently. It's a bit like thieves, except they don't. For the main Ranger, they don't get a backstab multiplier, and they don't actively put points into hide in shadows and move silently. It basically is just automatically goes up as the Ranger levels up. The Ranger can also charm animals. This is not useful. Animals aren't. It's not a big deal, and I don't think I've ever used charm animals successfully. Rangers do get a favored enemy, and that gives them a bonus to hit and a bonus to damage. My advice here is to think about what really needs to get those bonuses when you're fighting. For example, by the time our Ranger is actually going toe-to-toe with ogres, they aren't going to need these bonuses. That being said, if we survive Baldur's Gate 1 and go into Baldur's Gate 2, you are going to go toe-to-toe with demonic or demon creatures, right? They used to be called outsiders. And getting that additional bonus is going to be really good. There's others that can help, others that can be good choices for your favorite enemy, such as dragons. I think mind flayers is an option. I wouldn't go with vampires because there's only a couple of specific areas where you're going to be facing off against them, and there's other ways to deal with vampires. But you don't want to go with something that's like a real simple creature like hobgoblins or slimes, something that's pretty easy to pick a fight with and beat, especially early on in the game. You want to go with something that's very, very devastating. So as a fluff note, other games allow Rangers to have other humanoids as their favorite enemies. These are things like elves, dwarves, humans, right? And considering that most of the game you're fighting against humans, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I kind of wish that you could choose humans to be your preferred enemy, your favorite enemy. But we can't have that. So, thanks TSR. Thanks Beamdog. Great job. Then there's appearance and sounds. As always, I kind of wish that you could put on a hood, but no, that's not the way it is. You can't be Aragorn. So I'll be putting together a playthrough of the Ranger soon, but until then, you can check out my other starter guides for Baldur's Gate. Feel free to comment, subscribe, and tell all your friends. Also, don't do drugs. Drink your milk. Pay your taxes. Respect your leaders. Go to church. Read the right newspapers. Obey the authorities. Don't question the people on TV. Just smile and nod. For now, take care and good luck. We're all counting on you.